Another day done, and who knows what the morrow will bring us. Eh, Dunk? Ser Arlan of Pennytree to Dunk, the Hedge Knight. On the surface, Ser Arlan of Pennytree seems like a very minor footnote in the history of Westeros. But once you get digging into what we know about his life, not only does he appear to be a very interesting character who broke lances against princes of House Targaryen, but a skilled warrior fighting in some generationally defining battles that changed the very course of history in Westeros. But, oddly, despite his small role in these kinds of events, his legacy and what he is most remembered for is in fact his squire, Sir Duncan the Tall, arguably one of the most well-known and legendary knights to ever have lived in Westeros, up there with the likes of Barristan the Bold, Sir Arthur Dayne the Sword of the Morning, and Sir Ryam Redwine. The achievements of Sir Duncan the Tall are Ser Arlan's legacy, as without Ser Arlan and his role in the life of Sir Duncan, he would likely have remained a Flea Bottom orphan of little repute. In this video, we're going to break down what we know about the life of Ser Arlan of Pennytree, his achievements, and his role in the rise of Sir Duncan the Tall. We will also be touching upon his portrayal in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, as it makes us question the reality of what we know of Ser Arlan, given so much of what we do know comes via Sir Duncan, and his very filtered view of his master. What we know of Ser Arlan as a person and the kind of knight he was comes mostly from the point of view of Sir Duncan the Tall and a few other select people who remember him, such as Baelor Targaryen. In fact, we can't even say for sure how old Ser Arlan was, with Duncan believing he was closer to the age of 60 than 50 at the time of his death. Duncan describes Arlan as a small, slim man. However, we must take this with a pinch of salt, given that everyone seems small from Sir Duncan's tall point of view. Duncan also believed that Ser Arlan was a kindly man and generous with giving praise. He liked the simple things in life, such as nights below the stars and watching the sunset each evening. He left enough of an impression to be remembered by princes and lords, such as Baelor Targaryen, the Hand of the King and Prince of Dragonstone, whom he once lost a well-fought joust to, at the tourney held at Storm's End to celebrate the birth of the Lord's first grandson. Being a hedge knight, Ser Arlan had very little money to speak of, but certainly enough to get by, keeping himself and Dunk fed, with the occasional night spent with a warm meal and a bed in an inn on the road. His wealth was mostly tied up in his arms and equipment: a basic steel longsword, an 8-foot war lance, a simple hunting dagger, a plain chain-mail hauberk, a dented iron half-helm, greaves and gorget, and an old, battered oak shield depicting his winged chalice sigil. At the time of his death, Arlan owned a chipped garnet, as well as 3 horses, which Dunk then inherited. Thunder was Arlan's big brown stallion warhorse, ridden only in tourney and battle. He's worth more than Arlan's other 2 horses put together. He's considered an old horse, a veteran of a dozen battles. Chestnut, a sway-backed stot, mostly ridden by Dunk. He was also an old horse, thus not worth much, but he was patient and easy to ride, and never bucked or bit. Sweetfoot was a female palfrey, and was Ser Arlan's main riding horse. It's not every man who can boast that he broke 7 lances against the finest knights in the 7 kingdoms. I could never hope to do better, so why should I try? Ser Arlan of Pennytree to Dunk, the Hedge Knight. We know very little about Ser Arlan's early life. We believe he was born sometime between 149 and 153 AC in the large village of Pennytree in the Riverlands, located north of the Red Fork in the disputed border area between Stonehenge and Raventree Hall, meaning the lands are likely controlled by either House Blackwood or Bracken. Pennytree is situated near Widow's Wash between 2 grassy hills known as the Teats, given their name by King Aegon IV. Pennytree itself is named for the huge oak tree that grows by the duck pond, to which hundreds of copper pennies have been nailed to. The village Holdfast, as strong as any in the Riverlands, has thick stone walls and is 12 feet high, behind which the people of Pennytree retreat when there are signs of trouble. When Ser Arlan was a little boy, his grandfather, for unknown reasons, took him to King's Landing, where he saw the last living dragon, which sadly died a year later. We know very little of Arlan's family, other than the fact he seemed to have at least a sister, whom had one child, and a son only known as Roger of Pennytree. There has been some speculation that Arlan's family may have had some connection to House Hersey of Newkeep, a minor noble house from Newkeep in the Vale of Arran, given their sigil is a winged chalice, much like that of Arlan's. However, given how far away Pennytree is from the Vale, it seems more likely that this similarity is just a coincidence. From what we know of Arlan, he was just a common man, not hailing from a noble family. How or when Arlan became a knight is not known, but given how knighthood works, we can assume he must have squired for a knight in his youth, who trained him in arms and eventually knighted Arlan, similar to Arlan's relationship with Duncan. The old Hedge Knight had done service at so many different keeps and castles throughout the years that Duncan could not recall the half of them. The thoughts of Duncan the Tall, the Mystery Knight. The first records we have of Ser Arlan in combat come in the year 193 AC, in which Ser Arlan unhorsed the then Lord Stokeworth and the Bastard of Harrenhal in the melee at King's Landing. It seems the Bastard of Harrenhal was a well-known knight who was the bastard son of a member of House Lothston, who at this time were the Lords of Harrenhal. We also know that some years prior to this, he unhorsed Sir Daemon Lannister, known as the Grey Lion, in a tourney at Lannisport. While timelines are vague, we do at least know for certain that Sir Daemon was not the Lord of Casterly Rock at this time. In 200 AC, Arlan was defeated by Prince Baelor Targaryen, known as Baelor Breakspear, Prince of Dragonstone, heir to King Daeron II, in a tourney at Storm's End celebrating the birth of a grandson to the Lord. The joust will be remembered by both Arlan and Baelor fondly, with Arlan later claiming to Duncan he broke 7 lances against Baelor Breakspear, which is a significant amount, while Baelor himself would only remember 4 lances. Regardless of the truth, thanks to the renown gained from the tourney and the honour shown to him by Prince Baelor, Arlan chose never to joust again after that prestigious showing. We can assume this means that from then on, when competing in tourneys, Arlan would only partake in the melee, or possibly the archery competition. However, if this is the case, we have no record of it. When you accept a lord's meat and mead, all you do reflects on him, Ser Arlan used to say. Always do more than he expects of you, never less. Never flinch at any task or hardship. The thoughts of Sir Duncan the Tall, the sworn sword. Ser Arlan's nephew, Roger of Pennytree, at some point prior to the first Blackfyre Rebellion in 196 AC, becomes his squire. It would seem as if Ser Arlan would take an active role during the first Blackfyre Rebellion. However, the full extent of it is unclear. While big events such as the Redgrass Field have been written about, much of the rebellion itself has yet to be fleshed out in lore, with much of what occurred still a mystery. The civil war between House Targaryen and House Blackfyre, between King Daeron and his half-brother Daemon Blackfyre, the Red Dragon and the Black, would divide Westeros in two, with half the realm backing House Targaryen, the other Daemon Blackfyre. The wounds and resentments in the aftermath of the war would never truly heal, with the impact of it still being felt by the time of Robert's Rebellion and the fall of House Targaryen just under a century later. The Blackfyre Rebellions were just as impactful and damaging to Westeros as other wars, such as the Dance of the Dragons. Ser Arlan and Roger fought beneath Lord Hayford's banner, taking part in the Battle of the Redgrass Field, which means they were part of the loyalist Targaryen faction. The Redgrass Field is where the war itself came to a head, in a huge bloody battle that would see Daemon Blackfyre and his eldest sons dead, Aegor Rivers Bitterstill wounded and in exile in Essos, and the names of Baelor Breakspear, Maekar Targaryen and Brendan Rivers, known as Bloodraven, written large in the history of Westeros forever, for their deeds that day. During the battle, the young Roger was killed in circumstances that are not clear. We do know that at some point Ser Arlan was next to Lord Hayford when he was slain by Lord Gorman Peake. I'd leave your sword, but it would just rust in the ground. The gods will give you a new one, I guess. I wish you didn't die, sir. You were a true knight, and you never beat me when I didn't deserve it, except that one time in Maidenpool. It was the inn boy who ate the widow woman's pie, not me. I told you. It don't matter now. The gods keep you, sir. Sir Duncan the Tall at Arlan's grave. At some time later, after the first Blackfyre Rebellion, Ser Arlan meets Dunk in the slums of Flea Bottom in King's Landing, and for reasons that are not clear, took him for his squire and began to train him in martial pursuits and teaching him how to be a true knight. Ser Arlan and another Hedge Knight, known as Sir Bennis of the Brown Shield, were among knights hired by a Dornish merchant to escort him from Lannisport to the Prince's Pass in the Red Mountains. While this route in particular and life in the Dornish marches were much safer since Dornish unification with the Iron Throne, it was still an incredibly dangerous journey, with banditry commonplace. It seems that Ser Arlan and Dunk also served at Highgarden under House Tyrell for a short time, which may be why Duncan had hoped that Lord Leo Tyrell, known as Longthorn, may have known of Ser Arlan of Pennytree at the Tourney at Ashford Meadow years later in 209 AC. It seems, during this time, the pair also marched in a few peasant levies, for what purpose is currently unknown. During this time frame prior to 209 AC, it is known that Arlan once helped hang an outlaw who had been stealing rings, and also served a minor lord in the Stormlands in a small regional dispute. It very much seems, during these years, much of Arlan and Duncan's time was spent wandering across the Stormlands and the Reach. 3 years before the tourney at Ashford Meadow, Arlan and Dunk served Lord Dondarrion in the battle with the outlaw Vulture King, likely fighting in the Dornish marches or into the Red Mountains themselves, with Arlan taking a wound during the combat. Also 3 years before the Ashford tourney, Arlan spent half a year in the service of Lord Florent. Once, a very drunken Arlan promised to take Dunk to a brothel, but the knight did not remember the promise once he sobered up. Arlan died of a chill on the road leading to Ashford Meadow in 209 AC. The cause of the chill is not known. Dunk buried Arlan's body on the western slope of a hill, facing the sunset, as Arlan would have liked. Dunk continued to the tourney. At Ashford he claimed to the Master of Games that Arlan had knighted him as Sir Duncan the Tall before passing, although there was no witnesses to the ceremony, and it's unclear if Arlan had really knighted Dunk. It is implied he did not. 2 years later, Duncan also claimed to Lady Rowan Webber that he had been knighted by Arlan. Ser Arlan of Pennytree as a character has been expanded a fair bit in the TV adaptation A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Namely, the way in which Duncan fondly remembers Arlan doesn't necessarily match reality, with Arlan being portrayed as a less than perfect knight, or in the words of Egg, a shit knight. But it's clear that Duncan cared for Arlan deeply and valued his relationship with the old Hedge Knight, seeing Arlan taking him on as a great act of kindness. Arlan is seen in the show giving away money to the poor, as much as a silver stag, which is a significant amount of money, especially when Arlan himself possesses very little wealth to begin with. It seems that Arlan tries to be honourable, even though, as we've seen through Duncan's flashbacks, he's not perfect all the time. The show does, however, give us an answer as to how Ser Arlan died, or at least half an answer. In the book, I've always read it as Arlan having some sort of fever after falling ill, or having some slow-moving long-term illness that eventually took his life. However, as we see in one of Duncan's flashbacks, Arlan sustains a nasty cut on one of his arms from an unknown source, but most likely some kind of combat, with the wound slowly becoming infected and causing a fever that in the end kills Arlan. While we don't know how Arlan got the cut, I like to think that maybe he got it defending someone, and that he was doing something knightly in the process. But the one thing that Duncan in the books and Duncan in the show understands is that while Ser Arlan had very little and no family of his own, Duncan was and always will be his legacy. How Duncan acts and performs, the kind of knight Duncan becomes, is a direct reflection on Ser Arlan of Pennytree himself, for moulding him that way.